Indonesia, an archipelago nation of over 17,000 islands, with a population of around 270 million people. The country is home to hundreds of ethnicities, cultures, languages and religions. Indonesia's wildlife is perhaps the world's richest and most diverse. Still to be found in parts of the vast nation are Asian elephants, orangutans, leopards, bears, and endemic species such as Javanese rhinos, Sumatran tigers, and Komodo dragons. Indonesia's plant life is also among the world's richest and most diverse. Just over half of the country is still covered by forest, including almost 8% of the world's remaining primary forest.
Karena pertama, seperti kita lihat di sekeliling kita, ini adalah hutan rawa gambut, salah satu yang terbesar, ekosistem rawa gambut terbesar di Indonesia, yang fungsinya luar biasa untuk menyerap karbon dan dalam krisis iklim saat ini sangat penting untuk mempertahankan keberadaannya. Kedua, dia adalah merupakan habitat orangutan. Dan juga bagi EIA ini merupakan tempat pertama kali EIA dan juga Telapak memulai kampanye illegal logging.
Following a severe economic crisis, Indonesia's dictator of over 30 years, Haji Muhammad Suharto, is forced to step down. For decades, the country's very lucrative logging sector has been controlled by Suharto and his cronies. Suharto's personal wealth is believed to be in the region of $38 billion. Almost overnight, central government's iron grip on the country disappears.
The fall of Suharto had created chaos. There was a power vacuum as the highly centralized military Javanese dictatorship fell apart, with all the very, very hierarchical systems controlled from Java out right across the archipelago. All of that was starting to unravel, and there was burgeoning corruption at multiple levels.
El Niño causes some of the worst forest fires Indonesia has ever seen. Millions of hectares of forest are destroyed. Alarmed at some of the reports they hear, a small team of British activists from EIA begin a fact-finding mission.
We went over to Borneo and we were trying to find out what was really going on. There was an El Niño going on, there were fires everywhere, we knew this, but why and what was happening and what was being done about it. And we drove sometimes for hours across an area that had been thick forest and was now just a mess. It was black, it was dark, you actually felt it as you went through it. It was devoid of any life.
The Environmental Investigation Agency is an NGO based in London. Its mission is to protect, respect and celebrate the natural world for the benefit of all. EIA uses a combination of video investigation, advocacy and campaigning to pursue its goals. The forest fires continue to rage. millions more hectares of forest are destroyed. The impact on people and wildlife is immense.
We talked to people about the wildlife in the area, of which there wasn't any anymore because it had been burnt out. But they told us of stories of orangutans, for instance, that would be racing away from the fires to try and escape. And the area is littered with water and rivers and canals, too, that have been built. And if a orangutan comes against water, it can't swim. And so the orangutans were just being burnt to death. And the people there, the Dayaks, they felt it was the heart of the place had gone, the soul of the place had gone.
In London, EIA released their first report on the crisis in Indonesia's forests. The Politics of Extinction outlines how corruption, nepotism, lack of governance, high timber prices and a huge thirst for land for palm oil plantations all contribute to the accelerated destruction of Indonesia's remaining forests and the shrinking habitat of the country's wildlife.
Putting out our report at the time, The Politics of Extinction, was really more of a response than an actual decision. Once we'd published our report, we took stock again. It had been a good scoping trip. We'd learnt a lot. We got a good feel for how we might be able to operate in Indonesia.
Back in 1967, Suharto had pushed through a law which transferred control of most of the country's land to the state.
I arrived in Indonesia 6 months after Suharto fell. The government of Indonesia invited the UK government to work with it, to see what could be done to sort out the problems in the forest sector.
Using the forest fires as cover, criminal gangs and timber mafias move into many of the country's national parks. Protected under the Suharto regime, these are places of great beauty, biodiversity and ecological importance. Most are primary forests, abundant with mature hardwoods and established populations of wildlife. Primary forests, also termed primeval, virgin and old growth, are naturally regenerating ancient forests of native tree species. They exhibit advanced and unique ecological features and display few signs of human activity or impact.
We were looking by then for a partner, and we felt also that we'd met in Telapak, an organisation that had not just the same ideas in terms of what could go forward, but that we could help with the investigative side and they could help us with understanding how to move forward within Indonesia.
Ayo jalan bareng, kerja bareng, seru-seru. Kupikir itu yang satu-satunya. Alasan kedua adalah alasan yang misalnya memang kejahatan kehutanan, penghancuran hutan, yang terjadi itu rasanya Telapak dan EIA bisa berbuat sesuatu. Jadi kami beruntung lah Telapak ya, yang baru mulai, belum tahu apa-apa gitu kan. Terus ketemu, terus memperoleh ilmu, memperoleh cara pandang, cara lihat, dan cara kerja, keterampilan yang sangat tajam itu.
Telapak was founded in Bogor near Jakarta in the mid-90s by a group of students studying environment-related subjects. The name translates from Bahasa as footprint. The organisation's remit is to advocate for the just and sustainable management of Indonesia's natural resources and to create and sustain a nationwide network of environmentally active people.
We decided rather to go for everything, we would focus on one thing, and that was illegal logging.
Telapak had some good up-to-date information about the situation on the ground in central Kalimantan, where this national park called Tanjung Puting we'd heard was being heavily logged. And the reason we were interested in Tanjung Puting is it was a globally famous nature reserve, and it had a very famous population of orangutans. And we felt that if logging could be so brazen in a place like that, then Indonesia's forests would be lost.
For most of the next year, joint teams from EIA and Telapak investigate forest crime around Indonesia. They focus on the national parks of Borneo and Sumatra. The teams are using EIA's relatively new methodology, video investigation. Sony's new format DV camcorder is a technological leap and a game changer in the industry. It's small, robust and easy to use, and becomes their weapon of choice in their fight to save Indonesia's remaining forests.
Jadi yang pertama-tama ngajari cara memotret dan memvideokan itu Dave tuh. Jadi di telapak kantor telapak yang lama ada sofa merah itu kan. Dave duduk di sini, saya duduk di sini, terus ini kamera. Nah, sedangkan tentang teknis kamera itu hanya dikasih tahu, oh ini cekrek. Yang lain-lainnya saya hanya nggak ada yang perlu ingat itu. Jadi intinya kan apa intinya ya? Kalau video intinya jangan goyang-goyang gitu doang. Salah.
Ketika kita tidak dapat mengendalikan baik dengan regulasi maupun dengan aparat keamanan dalam hal ini polisi dan polisi kehutanan, maka pelibatan civil society masyarakat dimungkinkan.
One of the first joint research trips is to the Tanjung Puting National Park in southern Borneo.
Investigators found illegal logging in every part of the park. The area has been divided up by illegal loggers, and even trucks are used on roads built by loggers within the park boundaries. Logging rails, used to move the logs out, were discovered throughout the area. Piles of valuable ramen logs are stored along the river, and logging camps litter the riverbank. At the mouth of the river, in full view of the authorities, logs are loaded onto large steel barges. The kingpin in these activities is timber baron Abdul Rasid, who owns factories on the nearby Arut River and has close links with the military and police. Mr. Rasid's nephew, Sugianto, showed one of the factories to EIA and Telapak investigators who were posing as businessmen. Part of the Tanjung Lingga company group, this ramen factory loads unmarked ramen from rafts, dries it in drying rooms and processes it into mouldings and blinds for export to Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan and the USA.
Responding to new information, the team then travel on to the Losa ecosystem in northern Sumatra.
EIA and Telapak investigators followed illegal loggers into the national park and filmed them preparing their logging camp. Loggers are paid a few dollars per day by the sawmill owners and are supplied the chainsaw and a repayable loan which binds them to these powerful businessmen. Investigators followed logging trucks to the local sawmills.
It's the big men that have to be gone after. That's the sawmill owners, the people that own the factories, and those people within the authorities, the military, the police, the forest department, who are also making money out of this.
EIA and Telepak's work in Indonesia is getting noticed.
I bumped into Dave Curry in a very remote area of forests in Aceh with his Indonesian colleagues and thought, you know, this must be one of the few organizations, international organizations, in partnership with Indonesian groups who was really documenting what was really happening in places where, you know, few people were going. EIA was willing to get its boots dirty, get off the beaten track.
This area has the highest density of orangutans anywhere in the world.
The final cut is launched at a press conference in Jakarta. The report and accompanying video investigation stun everyone present and around the country.
And the report was very hard-hitting, it named names, it did all this kind of stuff. Now, they'd never seen that kind of press conference ever before in Indonesia. Remember, it had been a dictatorship. there was oppression about all of that. This was the first time an environmental group had come and given this kind of presentation with the evidence, with the photos, with the video, with the names. And it was so well attended. We had CNN, we had BBC, we had Reuters, we had all the big internationals were there, but the locals were there too.
I was sitting at the back, and Indonesians were, I think, gobsmacked. They had come out of a 30-year dictatorship where the press had been constrained. You only saw state-controlled TV. So a lot of people, certainly those living in the city of Jakarta on Java, had no idea of what was going down in their forests. And they were not used to frank, open conversation and expose of things. And it had a huge impact on them. I think that was the beginning of a sort of real awakening of some kind of environmental awareness, but also a sense that this was their resource and it had been stolen from them.
It was a good time for us to be bringing in our call for action to the government, and we made it very clear that if you can't take action in Tanjung Puting, then you can't save any forest in Indonesia, because Tanjung Puting was so well known and it was so brazen what was going on. It was just outright robbery.
Kami kontak pertama kali dengan IAIA ya, Telapak, ketika menyajikan film yang film yang termasuk berani.
Now established as credible and serious players, EIA and Telapak decide to continue their partnership.
So the final cut opened doors for us. Telapak and EIA were taken seriously now, were people that knew about these issues. We could talk to diplomatic missions, we could talk to other NGOs, we could talk to the media. We were a serious part of the game, if you like.